Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Linwood Jackson Radio Show. I'm your host, Linwood Jackson. I want to welcome you as always. We're coming at you live at WFAI 1510 AM. We got a big topic again, as usual, today. Got a special guest coming on. This is February, the month of February, African American History Month, and we're going to put out a bunch of history for you. Although on our show we like to celebrate all year long. You know, it's a lot going on in Delaware right now. A lot of changes taking place that you need to be aware of. So in case you want to get involved, you can. Repealing the death penalty. Death penalty repeal, I think the Supreme Court just halted all the executions in Delaware for now. They're looking at it as a constitutional issue. They think that it's violating the Constitution, and so they halted all of them in Delaware. But all pending capital murder trials and executions have been halted until the Delaware Supreme Court can determine the constitutionality of this state's death penalty law. I mean, it's an issue, but I think that we would go better as a people if we had our elected representatives repeal the death penalty system than to have the courts do it. But, the message, why kill people who kill people? Just to show that killing is wrong. That's the question, all right? Mr. Ronald Hampton. He is the retired executive director of the National Black Police Association. The National Black Police Association is a nationwide organization trying to establish the promotion of justice, fairness, and effective law enforcement. They believe that the death penalty is un-American, unjust, and unconstitutional. So I have on the line Mr. Ronald Hampton, who is the retired executive director of National Black Police Association. Mr. Hampton.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm fabulously well, thank you. Welcome to the Linwood Jackson Radio Show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's just a pleasure and an honor. Tell us, please give us a brief history. I know you've been in law enforcement for many years. You're retired now and speaking out in the community about a lot of things, actually.
Yes, sir. Like I said, my name is Ronald Hampton. I'm a retired D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer. I worked there for almost 24 years. I retired in 1994. Since 1994, around 1987, I took on the position of the executive director of the National Black Police Association. And so I held that position until 2010. And that's much of what I was involved in after the retiring from the Metropolitan Police Department. We were involved in working with brothers and sisters all over the world, and I mean literally all over the world. There are now black police organizations in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in South Africa, in other parts of the Caribbean, as well as we work with the Roma people in Northern Europe. Used to be called Gypsies. They are called the Roma people. They created an organization there because by virtue of their ethnicity, they were discriminated against. So we sort of worked the whole cycle because what we found out is that things were happening to people of African descent in Europe, in the Caribbean, in Canada, for no other reason than the color of their skin, just like here in America. And
wow.
So we were allies to those brothers and sisters. And we began to work on those issues here in this country because, racism wasn't eliminated. It wasn't erased as a result of the civil rights laws. It wasn't eliminated as a result of the laws around allowing black folks to vote and whatnot. So, and we're still experiencing that today. There's still racism very much in America, and probably the institution that bears the most is the criminal justice system.
Uh-oh.
We see it manifesting its ugly self in the criminal justice system. I have friends who said after slavery, racism and discrimination was manifested in the criminal justice policies and practices of this country. And pretty much that has borne itself out. So at this stage in my life, I don't know if I was really thinking about retiring and doing nothing, but we're still in a battle because racism is still very much alive and well, even in the period of having a black president, we're still battling racism and discrimination and white supremacy. But to his credit, those are some of the things that are now on his agenda to deal with, to change, to use the word reform. I don't like reform because I think we ought to be using words like restructure because the system has to be restructured. Reform is something that's temporary, and it usually doesn't last long enough to really dig down deep into the culture of our organizations and institutions that deal with racism and white supremacy. So, in order to really change, I think we have to restructure these systems and institutions in a way that equality is going to ring out.
I agree 100%, sir. I believe you're speaking about President Obama, first African American president of the United States of America, and he did appoint the first U.S. Attorney, African American U.S. Attorney General in the form of
Yes, sir.
Eric Holder to
Right.
take the realm and try to change things within our justice system. Now, you, sir, have worked as a community relations officer in
Yes, sir.
D.C. for a good minute. What do you think we need to do to solve that issue? There's the police relationship between our police officers and our youth out there seems
Right.
to be dismal in a lot of our big cities around there. Can you offer any suggestions on how to bridge that and fix it?
Well, experience would tell me that we need to be invested more in policing from the standpoint of it being a service rather than something that is involved in enforcing laws. Now, when I say that, their job is to enforce the laws, but they can't protect you unless they know you. I truly, honestly believe that. As a police officer in Washington, D.C., I walked the foot beat. I worked in the community. I lived in that community. That's the community I grew up. I'm a Washingtonian, born and raised here. Lived here all my life except for traveling in the military. I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Thanks for your
So
service, sir.
I've been around. But the only way that you're going to ever eliminate that is that the police have to see themselves not just only as servants, public servants for white folk and folk with power, but they have to see themselves as servants for the people, the poor people, the black people, the Hispanic people,
All
the
people.
immigrants who come to this country looking for uh, a better life.
Hmm.
That's the role that the police have. So the success of policing is developing a relationship with the very people that they serve. Have you ever been into a store to spend your money, and then when you get in the store, the people who are there to serve you act like you're foreign?
Hmm.
But you don't want to spend your money there. You don't want to ask them to serve you. If they ask you, can I help you, more than likely you're going to say no. Well, that's what happens in our community because historically the police have been an occupying army. And so they're going to have to deal with that. But that's just one cog in the wheel because there are a variety of things. Like police officers, I think, should live in the community. I think policing should reflect those that are served. We should have women, Hispanics, African Americans, other folk,
Hmm.
Asians, across the board. And then the policies and practices have to be reflective of what the people want, not what they want, police, but what the people want, because policing isn't a secret. Sometimes they treat it like it's a secret, and then they treat the public like, well, we know what's best for you. Well, you don't know what's best for me if you don't know me, if you don't talk to me, if you haven't engaged me as a person and as a member of this community rather than treating me like I'm just a number. So it's those kind of things. And then the laws, the legislators have to be involved in putting forth uh, laws, legislation that turn into laws that's going to benefit the people. And so it's not just policing that also has to change, but in terms of how community residents see policing, we need to take more of a responsibility in shaping policies and practices in terms of how they manifest in our community. So it may not necessarily be 50-50, but clearly we have a role in developing public safety strategies and how they're going to work in our community, and more importantly, how they're going to work on us, how they're going to affect us as people of color.
I agree 100%. Black lives matter, just like all folks' lives matter. All lives
That's
matter.
right.
And it seems to me, though, a lot of the perception is that when police officers are called in communities, for an issue to resolve an issue, a lot of times it gets escalated to a
It,
point
it,
where it
it does.
doesn't need to go.
You're right. You're right. And that's a shame because I see the job of policing, and I believe that it is. The job of policing is to de-escalate escalating situations. But again, the reason why I believe that happens because police officers aren't trained or educated in a modality that gets them into solving problems and utilizing the many skills that they may have and acquired in the education and training process to be able to deal with situations. See, for example, I happen to believe that the police shouldn't be involved in responding to calls for people to assist mentally ill people. I think that policing should be one of the elements that respond to calls for mentally ill people, along with mental illness professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And see, so because mental illness professionals are trained
Right.
to deal with people. And there's a variety, there's a huge spectrum of people with mental illness, not just, the whole thing about people being crazy. No, there's a whole variety of different things that people suffer from. And so just simply running an officer through a maybe 40-hour course about mental illness doesn't necessarily identify what those different illnesses are, as well as the identification of the behavior that go along with them and the response to them.
Exactly. Human
Yeah,
interaction goes a long way.
that's right.
When you want to react and act and talk to people as human beings. I know there was a case here in Delaware where there's a person with disability in a wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all kind of accusations being made. However, the police officers were called, of course, and these four officers, they just opened fire on this guy in a wheelchair. They asked him to do certain things. He couldn't do them for whatever reason. They just opened fire on him. I don't know the details other than that, but they killed this guy in the wheelchair. I'm thinking he obviously had to have mental illnesses and issues going along with
Absolutely.
you understand what I'm
Well,
saying? And I'm like, how can you can't deal with a guy in a wheelchair? This man is
well,
not going
you're
anywhere.
right.
You understand what I'm saying?
You're
Um,
absolutely right. Yes,
but
sir.
so it,
I mean, they have a responsibility and an obligation to protect themselves. But first of all, you have to establish the fact that the man is a threat to you. And unless they found that the man had a weapon or something like that, then that would be the only way that they could respond with deadly force. But other than that, you don't just sue someone simply because you disagree with them or they're arguing with you or whatever have you. So those are the kind of things that we're going to have to grapple with also. This police up until, and right now, police officers can justifiably use deadly force, and all they have to say is that I felt that that man was a threat to me. My life was in danger, and that's enough to say for the officer to use deadly force. Well, there are some things that the training and education ought to do to reduce the whole idea of you being afraid of someone simply because of the color of their skin or because you didn't grow up in that community. So the justification for that really needs to be dealt with, as well as how do you train and educate people to reduce those dangers. And we have to also deal with the issues of bias, the explicit and explicit biases that, that are created and have been created in our society that we have also individually and collectively as a society. So that's why the whole question, I mean, it's an easy question to ask, but it's a hard question to answer sometimes because there's just so many components to having and improving the relationship between police and our community. And I know you know this, brother, but this has been going on for a long time.
a long
I'm
time.
71 years old, and for as long as I was a police officer, and even after police officer, and even before that in our country, during the civil rights era and the struggle for that, we've been talking about and responding to and trying to get ahead of these things. So we've had some victories, but there's still a lot of work left to be done.
Right, and a lot of people think that we can't get the work done, the training we need, the equipment that we need, police
Right.
officers that is because for lack of funding. Well, here in Delaware, we're trying to abolish the death penalty. We're kind of close. It's a lot of reasons why we should find alternative sentences besides death penalty. And
Yes,
for one reason, we could save a lot of money. There's resources can go into policing. Could you speak on the issue of the death penalty for a second, if you would?
well, it's probably no secret. I'm opposed to it and always have been opposed to it. Even as a police officer, I was opposed to it. I think my opposition to it was really based on my mother and my upbringing, because she said that that killing people was wrong, and she also said that killing people who kill people is wrong too. And so I've lived with that, and and when I had a chance to go to work on behalf of talking about the death penalty and its use in our society, I stepped up, and I've been involved in speaking out against it. I think the evidence is there. The studies are there to show that a lot of black people have been victimized by the components of the criminal justice system, where the end of the rope is the death penalty. And so if you look at a system in totality, and there are these other factors that are against black people, then you have to conclude that there's something wrong with it, and that
Like
black people are
tampering with evidence.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
You,
Like black people getting the death penalty. See, one time black death penalty was only given to black men who raped white women. But when white men raped black women, they didn't get the death penalty. Some of them didn't even go to jail. But
That's
they
right.
could do that because black people were property. They could do what they want to property. So, in the minds of our society, some of those idiosyncrasies still exist today. So where there's imperfectness, and the criminal justice system is run by human beings. There's no perfect system there. And so by virtue of that, I just think we don't need a death penalty. And that also leads to the cost, because it is finite, because it is what it is. And after you kill someone, you can't bring them back. But we will find out later on that the person was innocent. I think last year alone, over 100 and some people were released from death row in prison. Well, not even from prison, but on death row in this country, because they were found to be innocent by one means or another. So when we have a country like America with the number of people that we have on death row, and then we also have a significant number of people being released from death row because they're innocent, and almost the overwhelming majority of those people are black, then there's something wrong with that. So we can't afford to be operating a criminal justice system where the death penalty is the end for some crimes, when we have the imperfectness that exists in there, and we're killing innocent people. So I just have a problem with that. And I think when people study that, when people read, when we talk about it in the kind of way to educate people, then it's reasonable to conclude that isn't a part of the criminal justice system that we really ought to have in America. And I know that there are going to be people who may disagree, but
They just have to
I
have
think
that's just be their opinion.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Right is
absolutely.
right and wrong is wrong. You're laying it on the table. The facts, it is what it is. You can look it up. You are the former executive director of the National Black Police Association. Sir, what would you have to say if you were to speak directly to our young African American men out there right now?
Well, I think a number of things. I think you have to get that education. You got to work in your family. You got to work in the community. These are things that belong to us. They don't belong to anybody else. They belong to us. In our community, we must take control of our community to do the kind of things that we have a healthy and productive community. We need to be involved in education, and I mean going all of the way. If college is available after high school, then you go to college. If it's not, you go to work and then go to college. But we need to take the responsibility of taking care of our communities. Sometimes we use the phrase too much, I believe, about it takes a village to raise a neighborhood or a family. But the fact of the matter is that the evidence will prove that when everybody in the neighborhood takes care of a neighborhood, then it's a healthy neighborhood, it's a productive neighborhood. So young men are a critical part of that. We're moving on in age, people like myself and others. So young people are going to have to step up and be responsible for education, staying out of the criminal justice system, working in communities, working intergenerationally with seniors and people in the middle stages of their life. It is very important. So it may not look good, but you got to stay on it and stay working hard and stay focused about what it is that you're going to be doing. And knowing, too, something about the criminal justice system and how it has worked over the years, you need to pay attention to that. And don't set yourself up for something that you will regret later on, because we need you right now, young people. We need you.
Great advice, sir. You speak at speaking engagements, organizations all over the world. How can anybody contact you if they need you to come in and speak?
I'm in Washington, D.C. I'll give you my cell phone number because people from all over the world call me, but I'd be glad to talk with people about that.
Okay.
My cell phone number here in Washington, D.C. is 202-744-2897. 202-744-2897. I have a real crazy email address, but I have a couple of email addresses. Probably the one that's the most simple is my name, Ron Hampton, 3286. That's Ron Hampton, 3286 at att.net. And again, if somebody calls me, I respond back. If somebody emails me, I answer the email, because if people take the time to call me or to send me a message, the least I can do is respond with an answer regarding the email. And I look forward to talking with you again, my brother. Delaware, I know a lot of people in Delaware. When I was in the Air Force, I was stationed there at Dover.
All right.
So I have some fond memories of playing basketball there, being there in the city of Dover, working with people, as well as, I still have some friends in some parts of Delaware right now.
All right now. Well,
I look forward to that, okay?
Look me up. We'll get you on the television program if you're in town.
I look forward to that.
We're out of time, sir. Can you take us to break?
This is Ronald Hampton. Information and power, and power is information. Thank you very much.
Very well said, sir. Thank you very much. Ron Hampton, our Executive Director of National Police Association. Very well. Lone Jackson Radio Show. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Linwood Jackson, the Linwood Jackson Show. Linwood Jackson.